the most intriguing thing is when we enter his property, he is literally sitting at a table, like a small, almost like a coffee table, and he's sitting there and he looks over his shoulder when we enter the door and says, "I've been waiting for you guys."
Hi, my name is Darrin Hill. Welcome to another episode of Warden Stories here at the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Today I've got my good friend, longtime coworker, Spencer Grace, one of Kaw County's finest. Glad you're here.
Hey, thanks, Darrin, man. I'm excited to be here. Obviously, I do hail from Kaw County, born and raised there. I've been fortunate to be a game warden there since 2009.
Nice.
That's not where I started, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. So for those that want to kind of know a little bit, we're both kind of, in some ways, Kaw County natives, or, you grew up there, but my grandma and grandpa and dad and aunt and uncle, they're all from that area.
You got roots?
I got roots. Yeah, I got roots right there. My older sister and my dad and grandparents are all buried there at Newkirk. So, yeah.
That's where I graduated from in 2001. Graduated from high school in Newkirk. Went from kindergarten through senior high school there. So,
wow. How long have you been at the department now?
I've been with the department since September 11th of 2006.
Wow.
Full time. I did some internships when I was in college at Hackberry Flat.
Oh, really?
Yeah. With Kelvin Schoonover and Weston Store, and we killed lots of salt cedars and maintained some wetlands, and really enjoyed my time down there. Might have broke even when it came to, it was a paid internship, but we had an apartment, and anyways, it was a great time. Still have, friendships and connections from that adventure, but that was my first job. And actually, that's not true either. I actually pulled deer jaws for my goodness, not Jerry Shaw.
Mike Shaw.
Mike Shaw.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah. For Mike Shaw.
One of the Shaws.
Well, yeah, there was 3 Shaws at the time. I was affiliated with one of my professors was Jim Shaw.
Yes,
then we had Mike Shaw. Then we had Jerry Shaw.
Yes.
And they were all wildlife related. So, but I pulled deer jaws for 3 years when I was in college. And I actually truly enjoyed that. We also helped some of the vets pull brain stems for CWD back then. Wow. And that was, that would have been like 2002, 3, and 4, something like that. The deer gun seasons for those years. And so deep history. Have enjoyed every second of it. Get paid to do what you love, and that's hard to complain about. So
not at all. So like Hackberry Flat compared to Kaw County, explain the difference.
Yeah,
between those spots.
This it's like an oasis in the desert down there. Of course, I was there May, June, July, and maybe a tiny bit of August. And we were maintaining those wetlands. Hackberry Flat was relatively new at that point. Yeah. And a lot of salt cedar invasion. We managed for dove and obviously waterfowl. Got to do a bunch of control burns and stuff there for dove. Enjoyed it so much that my dad and my brother and I and some other friends actually went back down there for dove season. Just to kind of, I guess, partake in some of the work. And it was amazing. And then at the same time, I got to see a bunch of federal game wardens and undercover game wardens, some of them that I knew. And we'll get to, I guess, how I probably knew them in a good way, because from attending the wildlife youth camp. So you're one of our proteges. Yes. I attended the very first wildlife youth camp that the department had.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And back then it was at Kaw Lake. And now it's at Lake Texoma. But so I think it was like 1999 or 98. I can't remember, but somewhere in that ballpark is where the very first one was.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's some legacy and roots there. I love it.
Yeah.
What made you want to become a game warden? Was it the youth camp or was it?
Well, it was before that. I guess growing up, other than my dad, for whatever reason, I always idolized the game warden, and that was Tracy Daniel. He's retired captain, and I think
we've had him on the show. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And a lot of people all across the state know Tracy, and so as a young kid, I kind of idolized him, and then he would always make time to, like, he came and spoke at my middle school.
Yeah.
You know, because I asked him to. And then, but he came and spoke literally at, like, I guess it was a science class or whatever it was. But so that was kind of the seed being planted in terms of, you know, and then just my passion for the outdoors. So growing up, I wanted to be a game warden. That's what my goal was, you know, and I didn't care that they didn't make very much money. It didn't matter to me. And it was just like a calling, you know? And then, when I was in college, as a lot of kids do, you kind of get sidetracked, and, you know, I didn't necessarily lose focus, but I was like, well, I could be a biologist if I can't get hired on as a game warden, because my passion truly is wildlife. And so that was the reason for the internship. It's also a way to get your foot in the door. It's not, you know, it's a competitive job. And so sometimes you got to do things that, you know, aren't your ultimate goal, but it's just a stepping stone. So we did the internship at Hackberry. And then after graduating from college from Oklahoma State, I took a job working on a private ranch and started an outfitter business for them. I was kind of a private lands biologist for this landowner, and then we started an outfitter business to supplement the ranch's income, and it was a great job. And a lot of my contacts in the hunting and fishing industry arose from that, like from 2005 and 6. And so, and I guess I have the personality where I just have been able to maintain those relationships and contacts and in a good way. In a
the networking connections are important. I was just mentoring some youth about it this last week and connecting people. And I think that's, it sounds like it worked out for you.
It has. Yeah, it has. And you know, those relationships, they're, you know, they're always beneficial in some way or another. And that's how, you know, a game warden job is solving problems or putting, you weren't kidding. A game warden job is really about solving problems and using your resources, whether it's a network or whether it is other law enforcement or whatever it might be. And so, I guess that's one of my skill sets, is being able to utilize those.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like it goes hand in hand as a warden. From what I've, you know, talking to a lot of different wardens, is that you're building trust within your community, make connections. If a landowner doesn't know you, they're not going to call you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we rely. I mean, there's one of us covering a vast area, over 900 square miles in my county, and then I help in other counties too. And we can only be in one place at a time. So if we don't use our network and our relationships, we're not going to be very efficient at our jobs.
It's like a partnership, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It's a partnership with your community, with your landowners, with the hunting and fishing community, and you have to maintain all those. And so it's not, you know, when you're young, you're like, I want that job so I can catch the bad guys. And when you get into the job, you still want to catch the bad guys. But so much more of it is really the networking and maintaining relationships. So, you know, hey, I've got to go catch this guy because this is the information I'm getting. But in order to do that, you've got to do the fishing clinics and the hunting, the hunter eds, and do all of that stuff, which is probably more important than catching the bad guys.
Talking at middle schools.
Talking at middle schools.
Yeah. Wow. So for those that don't know, so where were you at when you first got hired? Where did you go?
Okay, so
and there's a legacy class of your all the wardens that were hired around that time. There's some long-term wardens that,
So, I like I mentioned, I went to work for a private, for a private landowner, and you know, just kind of the timing, the way things worked. When I started that job, there were 5 other employees on the ranch, and very quickly it was me and one other employee. And so I was sitting on a tractor going in circles thinking about the degrees I had. And
as you do on a tractor.
And I had interviewed for a game warden job and did not get it. And one of the people who sat on my interview, his name was Joe Hemphill. Joe calls me up on my phone while I'm sitting on a tractor going in circles, and he's like, Spencer, I want to hire you. You need to apply for this position. I want to hire you to come down and help us with the black bear program. And so, and literally the very next day, I cannot think of the guy's name that ran the STEP program.
Yeah, it was probably Ed.
Ed Kunis. That's right. It was Ed Kunis. Ed calls me, Spencer, I need a technician. I need somebody to help me. You're a great shooter. You know how to talk to people. I want you to put in for this position. And so it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm wanted, and so I came down to Oklahoma City and interviewed for both of those positions at the same time and ended up accepting the job to be a black bear technician down in southeastern Oklahoma. And I lived in Hodgen, actually lived in the office for a little bit. And then my wife eventually moved down there and we got a rent house. But so my first full-time job was trapping nuisance black bears and then working on the Ouachita National Forest, doing some food plot work and prescribed burns and stuff. So I loved every minute of that job. It was so fun. It's a completely different world than where I live in north central Oklahoma on the Kansas border. But that job was so much fun. I still have like this love for southeastern Oklahoma that I didn't have before that job, and I wouldn't have it had I not been down there working.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that sounds like that was right when our bear population was starting to ramp up, and we're.
Oh yeah. So this is a funny story. Joe Hemphill and Jeff Ford, they're great guys working for them down there. We were having these roundtable discussions with other biologists because we didn't have a bear season at that point, And this will give you a little bit of insight to my personality. And I'm a young guy trying to make a name for myself, and I work hard but I also research stuff. And so we were having this last roundtable discussion, and there's probably eight biologists in there, and for whatever reason they've got me sitting there, and for days I had been researching, black bear management in other states and what are these other agencies doing. And so I had this whole notebook and I had these notes and stuff, and I'm just sitting there and I'm not going to say nothing unless they ask me. So they're going kind of around the table. It really wasn't a table. We were all just literally in chairs and kind of a half moon. And they're all talking about it, kicking stuff around, and they go to me and they're like, well, Spencer, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, this is,
you're kind of brand new on the job.
Brand new. I mean, less than a year. I mean, I only spent a little over a year down there.
Yeah.
And they're like, Spencer, what do you think? I said, well, guys, just so you know, I've researched it. I've got these notes. And every state that has black bears has a black bear management plan, whether they have a season or not. And we didn't have that at the time.
Wow.
And so at the end of the meeting, they didn't say a whole lot. At the end of the meeting, Joe goes, Spencer, you're going to call Arkansas tomorrow and get a copy of their black bear management plan, and you're going to help put that together. And so it was pretty awesome.
That is
not
awesome.
only did they ask me my opinion, but they gave me some responsibility in putting it together. And then the very next year, we had our first black bear season. So it was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, you're right there. And it sounds like this sort of, I call servant leadership. They're lifting up everyone around you.
Exactly.
Lifted you up, got you started.
Yeah, I mean, they gave me purpose. I wasn't just brush hogging food plots, which I did that too.
Yeah.
And we were catching nuisance bears, but it was awesome. Great experience.
Wow. So, and do you get down there often?
I go as often as I can. I used to go every single year just to hunt eastern turkeys.
Yeah.
Now that our limit's only one, it's a little bit harder for me to make it down there. but I love to go down there, fish Wholesome Valley, Cedar Lake.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, we've had several state record bass come out of there.
Mm-hmm.
That's really because of some very intense management from the Forest Service.
Yeah.
You know, they fertilize that lake to encourage plankton, and it's a very interesting program. There's a reason those big bass come out of there. There's giant red ears, giant warmouth. There's big crappie in there.
Yeah,
it's a cool place, and it's, you know, it's in the middle of. Man, you weren't kidding again. It's in the middle of kind of, I would say nowhere. It's in the middle of this big valley, and you got two mountain ranges beside you. Mm-hmm. And it's just a really cool place to go. And even if you're just camping, it would be a great place to go.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. I've been there a few times and camped a few times. I love it.
But for me, my favorite thing to do down there is, well, I guess there's two favorites. It's to hunt eastern turkeys in Oklahoma, and then to smallmouth fish those streams down there. The native smallmouth in those streams they're so fun to catch.
It's like your rod getting struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And that's so smally. And so for what Spencer's talking about, so you guys know, we're pretty close to our fire exit back here, and people use that to go up and down at the central office. And so it actually echoes into our space here, so it makes us think we're having someone come in to say hi.
Feels like somebody's shaking the door.
Yeah, it does. So all game wardens have good stories on it. You have probably hundreds, but you just told me about one that you just wrapped up, and I think that's a good one for our listeners and viewers to hear.
Yeah. So jumping from southeastern Oklahoma to Osage County as a game warden, had the opportunity to transfer from Wildlife Division to Osage County as a game warden in 2007. So 2007, 8, and 9, I was a game warden and assigned to the Pawhuska area. Okay. And so I developed these really good long-time relationships with landowners and the public. And even when, you know, Pawhuska City's not that far. I mean, it's across the river from Osage County. I would get information still, even though it's not my primarily assigned area, that, you know, hey, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing this. And so very recently, at the end of 2024 deer gun season, we were getting some intel, myself and Larry Green, and we started doing an investigation on an individual there in Pawhuska. And so this guy worked in the oil field, and he, you know, for lack of a better word, he was just a chronic poacher. And so I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to lead into this. So we started getting intel, and so we used our database and our license system to start building the case. Yeah. You know, we knew he was killing deer. We were getting a few pictures of animals that he had killed, and they did not match up with his licenses. Ironically, he was checking some of these animals in and not having permits for them. And so we built this case and ultimately obtained a search warrant for his residence. Yeah. And I think that the most intriguing thing is when we enter his property, he is literally sitting at a table, like a small, almost like a coffee table, and he's sitting there and he looks over his shoulder when we enter the door and says, "I've been waiting for you guys." Wow. So ultimately, the search warrant, we seized over 30 deer, 4 turkeys, 2 parts of 2 eagles, hawk feathers, hawk fan displays, talons, and eagle head. I mean, there's just a plethora of various types of wildlife, and he had a Yeti cooler on the front porch with quartered out deer meat that had spoiled, just sitting in water. He had part of a deer hanging. I mean, it was a very bad situation. Like, just, if you could think of like the worst, like illegal stuff everywhere, that's what this is. Yeah. You don't have to look very hard to find it. And so he had, in interviewing him in his residence, I believe it was Larry Green and Joe Alexander that did most of the interviewing on this case. It became known that he was addicted to heavy drugs.
Yeah.
And this is a young guy, and he made himself go clean essentially, 3 years prior to us serving the warrant. And he admitted that poaching animals gave him the same high that those drugs did.
Wow.
And so while he was sober from drugs, this filled his need for that addiction or that high. And so it was really sad.
Very sad.
Very sad situation. But it was almost like him saying, I've been waiting for you guys, is almost like an admission of I need help.
For sure. He was checking in these animals, even though he
correct
didn't have the proper license, and
there was, and all of these animals he had killed in those 3 years.
Wow.
Over 30 bucks. 30 bucks. And we have some pictures that we could share. I mean, the case is over. There was a plea agreement, reached. It was just under $3,000 in court costs, and you guys are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, that's not very much."
Yeah.
But he agreed to pay $30,000 to the state in restitution.
That's a lot.
He forfeited all of his long guns that he owned.
Yeah.
I'm talking like a dozen of them. He cannot hunt or fish until that restitution is paid back to the state, and he's only paying $500 a month. This is a 22-year-old-ish guy at this point that doesn't have a lot of money,
Yeah.
So he's not going to be able to hunt or fish legally for a very long time.
Very long time.
And he had a minivan that he had set up to shoot these deer out of. They had these chairs in the back. They'd roll the sliding door. It was crazy. Those Slockmaster blowguns with the big game darts covered in blood. He never really admitted to shooting deer with that, but he did admit to shooting squirrels and house cats and stuff in the city limits. They'd ride around and slide that door open and shoot them with that blowgun. It was just really, I've seen a lot of stuff in almost 20 years of doing this. It's just really kind of,
it's morbid.
Morbid. Yeah. I mean, hopefully the guy, he also has to spend 20 weekends in jail as part of his plea agreement. And I'm sure there's stuff that I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
But that is the most recent, this is the first time anybody's talked about this case because we haven't publicized it or anything like that. So,
wow. And it's tough because, you want to be able to throw the book at these people as much as you can. And then there has to be some sort of restitution as well. And has to be some sort of,
at the end of the day, a game warden isn't the judge and jury.
Yeah.
And we can write somebody every single ticket that we can for every violation that they have. But, as a person, I think we could both agree, how much is enough? Obviously he's taken a lot from the state. He's taken a lot from the sportsman. But is $100,000, that he'll never be able to pay, is that enough?
Yeah, when they don't have
we don't get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
The attorneys and district attorneys, they hash that stuff out. Sometimes they ask us for recommendations. Sometimes they don't. It's not our job. Our job is to catch the people, present the case in the best way we can, and let the courts decide at the end. There's a reason why it's not public opinion that convicts somebody, right?
For sure. Yeah. And you have a good working relationship with your attorney general and your county and all that. And get to know the judges and you have to. You have to.
No different than, getting to know those landowners and the sportsmen that you see every day. Those are if I make the best case in the world, but I don't have a relationship with my district attorney, it's unlikely that it will go in the way that it should for the sportsman. So,
yeah. And that's probably one factor that a lot of people don't realize that game wardens are doing. It's much of being a people person and getting to know people, whether you like them or not. Maybe you don't, but you got to have a working relationship with them, because you're, at the end of the day, it's for the wildlife, right? And
yeah. I mean, game wardens are the voice for wildlife. I mean, wildlife can't speak for itself, and otherwise, things would be a lot different. But I would say that is the one aspect before I became a game warden I had no idea about.
Yeah.
I'd never been in trouble. I didn't know. I didn't know the process that you go through.
Yeah.
And that's not something you learn until you do it. Like just to simply write a ticket and go file it. There's a process to it. And to anybody that might be thinking about being a game warden, there's a learning curve. And it's definitely overcomable, but you have to have those relationships with your ADAs and your DAs and your judges, because if they don't know what you do, it's very hard for them. It's a victimless crime, essentially, because the victim doesn't have a voice. And so if they don't know what you do and how you operate, it's going to be hard for you to get the prosecution and get your citations and charges the attention they deserve.
There's the whole North American wildlife model. And sometimes you have to teach it to our,
And in my career, I would say that the assistant district attorneys that get assigned to me, if those people go on a ride along with a game warden, they talk about it for years. Like it's like the most exciting thing for them. and for a good reason, but at least they take the effort to understand what we do. And because, compared to other law enforcement, we're not writing hundreds of thousands of tickets. They rarely see us. And so when they see us, we want them to know that it's important, right? It's important to us, and it's important to the sportsmen of Oklahoma.
And people. I mean, I think that's awesome. You had a tip. We were talking about this a little bit earlier about our duck hunting and duck hunting that happens up at Kaw. I mean, it's very popular duck hunting area. Yeah.
So, I would say that Kaw is like ground zero for the waterfowl craze. At least it was. It's still very, very strong there. It's kind of moved from the lake to private property now, and it's a big, I guess, mess, for lack of a better words, between outfitters and people leasing property. And so everybody's kind of fighting for the same resource now. Kaw used to have a very successful millet program, and people would come from literally all over the country. And I remember one year after the split, and it might have been Tracy Daniels that actually had cataloged this, but the opening day after the split, there were 38 different states' license plates in the parking lots at boat ramps on Kaw. And that's significant.
It's very significant.
But as Kaw no longer has a yearly millet program. Yeah. And so, but people did that for so many years, they still want to come to the area. The birds have really moved to private. And so it's a big mess. But I think something that I wanted to talk about that you alluded to is we've had to do some recoveries and rescues on Kaw Lake because, duck hunters going to the extreme to fight for the best spot. They go out at 2 a.m. to get on an island or whatever. There was a tragedy that occurred in 2017 where two men lost their lives, and something that arose because of that. Like, we did plenty of research that one of the gentlemen had shucked his neoprene waders, and that's a bad idea. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're submerged and your waders fill with water, you're gonna freak out, and you're gonna want to try to get rid of them. But they are buoyant. They will keep you up in the water column, and so that's really the worst thing you can do until you can make it to the bank or whatever, and start to, we're obviously talking about hypothermic situation, but I think it would even apply in a warm water situation. I mean, you don't want to freak out because those waders can keep you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things in my career that really stands out was that tragedy. And I think it's 2017. It was Winter Storm Goliath, and two young men from Arkansas both lost their lives.
And you were the kind of had a whim. Hey, I think I know where they're at, because you had been looking for them for a while. It was it weeks or so that they hadn't found them. And
no, so what really happened on that deal is they had gone missing like roughly at 2 a.m.
Okay,
and then family started being concerned. They started contacting authorities, and they ultimately got to me late in the afternoon. And this is I'm talking a horrific storm. Like temperatures, if I remember right, they dropped 60 degrees. Like it had been in the upper 70s to 80s right before that, and then it drops to low 20s and 60-mile-an-hour northeast winds. These guys had only ever been there one time with another person, and they're completely inadequately supplied for what they were going to do.
For sure.
Especially for those. There's nothing that's good for those conditions.
No. Yeah.
However, they get to where they were trying to go, and I believe that the lake was higher in water elevation than they expected, and either when they tried to get out, they capsized their boat, or they got out and the water was deeper than they expected. And so they're not good. And we're talking like not visible, like only being able to see a few feet type of conditions. Like these are bad wind. It went from sleet to snow, bad conditions. And so by the time one of the parents called me and they're like, hey, we really need help. And I'm sick. Like I've got like the flu, 100 and something temperatures at that time.
Yeah.
And I made the comment, and it's the one comment that will never leave my mind. And I said, knowing where they went, if they are alive, I will find them.
Okay.
And so me and one of the county deputies went there. This actually butts up near some of my family's land.
Yeah.
So like I grew up like on these banks of the lake, and so I knew where they were headed, and I knew that if they were going to make it, given the conditions, I would have to find them that night. So me and one of the deputies went up the bank, and we found one of them, and they weren't alive.
Yeah.
And so they were still in the water. But, and then having, recalling what I had said to the guy's dad, it was, that was pretty heartbreaking. Like I didn't think about it at the time that I said,
of course,
I didn't even mean it like that, but that's the way it ended up.
It's the honest truth.
Yeah.
And tough.
So, to your point, what you said earlier, the other, once that happens, lots of other agencies become involved. And really the conditions were that night, we could not recover that person. We had to wait till the morning to recover. And the second individual, other agencies take over, and rightfully so. That's what they're trained to do. And the other person wasn't found for another 7 days after that.
Yeah. I remember that. It was devastating, heartbreaking for all of us, the family.
Yeah. And that person was the one that removed his waders. And he had actually made it. To, no, that's not correct. He still had his waders on. He had made it to the bank, and he was not in the water. We had, a lot of focus was in the water, but he had froze to death up on the bank underneath some really, really thick cedar trees.
He tried to.
That was not my favorite moment. I would say that and a couple other things probably impacted me more as a game warden than really anything.
I thank you for sharing that. I know it's emotional, and a lot of people that see game wardens, they don't always think about these things. And it affects you, affects your family.
Yeah.
It affects everyone around you. The brotherhood and sisterhood of the law enforcement.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It in a strange way, it brings you together. It actually brings you close to those families that are affected. I've actually maintained and have great relationships, friendships with some of those victims' families. Great people. Horrible thing for them to go through and endure. But, they've built scholarships based on, their sons' names, and they've impacted local communities with those. And so they've taken a big negative in their life and turned it into a positive.
That's fantastic. You know, and I think I've seen them even want to talk about water safety and, picking the right time to go out and hunt. Sometimes taking a bye day and saying, you know what, that's probably not. But sometimes Oklahoma, our weather turns on a dime, doesn't it?
Yeah, you never know. All I would say is, like, when you have a storm or a weather system like that, it's truly not worth it. I've put myself in the situation as the hunter and pushed the envelope and hunted on the edge, and we do it for a reason, because it's typically very good hunting during those times. But there's not a duck worth your life out there, or goose, or whatever it is you're hunting. And as outdoorsmen, we want to challenge ourselves and we want to push the limits, but there is a line that has to be established, or, your family or friends, they don't deserve that.
They don't. Well, Spencer, thanks for coming on today. I think you told some great stories, and hopefully you'll come back on at some point.
Yeah.
Have some other stories for us. And for those that don't subscribe and like, make sure you do that. Share this podcast with your friends and family. And until we meet again, make sure you tell your friends and family about Warden Stories. Thanks for watching.